Rain fell in heavy sheets, turning the narrow city street into a river of shimmering reflections as Alina struggled against the wind, her thin cardigan clinging to her body like wet paper, her hair plastered to her face, every step splashing cold water into her already numb shoes. Yet she kept moving because stopping only reminded her how lost she felt in life. Jobless after the small cafe she worked at shut down, carrying a bag filled with rejection letters from employers who didn't even bother to interview her, and facing a landlord who had given her exactly 9 days to pay the rent she didn't have. She walked with her head down, too tired to care about anything except getting home to her tiny, half-furnished room, but then she heard it, a small, fragile sound barely audible through the storm, a whimper, soft yet sharp enough to slice through the rain. She froze, heart stuttering, and slowly turned toward the bus stop nearby where the flickering streetlight illuminated something that made her breath catch in her chest. A baby, no older than maybe 4 months, wrapped in a thin, soaked blanket, lying helplessly on the bench as the storm drenched him. Disbelief shot through her as she dropped her bag and ran toward him, her instincts overpowering every other thought, and without hesitation she scooped the tiny body into her arms, shielding him with her own as if she had been born to protect him. "Oh my God, sweetheart, who did this to you?" she whispered, voice trembling, pulling him close to share whatever body warmth she had left, her cold fingers brushing his shivering cheeks as she cradled him tighter, unable to understand how any human being could abandon a baby in a storm like this. The rain stung her face as lightning tore across the sky, but she didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't think of herself, only the baby, whose soft cries quieted slightly as he felt her embrace. She looked around desperately, hoping someone would appear, a mother, a desperate parent searching, but the street was empty except for blurred headlights rushing past, people too consumed by their own lives to notice the tiny miracle trembling in her arms. "I promise, you're okay, I've got you," she murmured, though inside she wondered how she would even call for help when her phone battery had died hours ago, and she didn't have money left for bus fare, let alone a taxi. The storm intensified, sheets of water pelting them as she crouched near the bench to shield him, her body shaking uncontrollably, fear rising that the baby wouldn't survive much longer in the cold. Suddenly, bright headlights cut through the darkness as a sleek black SUV screeched to a stop before her, splashing water in every direction. Alina stiffened, tightening her grip on the baby as a tall man jumped out, broad-shouldered, soaked instantly by the rain, his expensive suit plastering against a body shaped by discipline. But it wasn't his appearance that startled her, it was the raw desperation in his eyes the color of storm clouds with a fire burning behind them as they locked onto the baby. "Leo." He breathed, the single name spilling out like a shattered prayer, and Alina had never seen a grown man break in real time, but this one did, his shoulders trembling, his jaw clenching as he stumbled forward like a father running to a child he thought he'd lost forever. He reached out as if to grab the baby, but his hands froze midair, shaking uncontrollably, and he swallowed hard before whispering, where did you find him?" She blinked through the rain, overwhelmed by the intensity of his presence, and stammered, "He was just lying here, alone, in the rain. I couldn't leave him," and something in him shattered further, relief and anguish mixing in a way that made the air between them heavy. He removed his expensive black coat, tailored and clearly worth more than everything she owned, and draped it over her shoulders, wrapping it around both her and the baby in one fluid, protective motion, his hands brushing hers with a gentleness she had never experienced, and he said in a voice so steady and low it soothed the panic in her heart, "You're safe now, both of you," as if he had been waiting, not for the baby, but for her. He guided them toward the SUV, shielding them with his body from the storm, and inside the warm leather interior Alina felt her numb fingers thaw slightly as she handed the baby to the man, who held him with the care of someone who'd spent sleepless nights memorizing every detail of this tiny life. She watched him whisper comforting words, his voice shaking as he pressed his forehead to the baby's, and she saw something unspoken in the way he held him. A kind of grief only someone who had already lost too much could understand. She recognized him then, though she didn't say it aloud. Adrian Hale, the elusive tech millionaire whose face appeared in magazines but never in public, the widower who vanished from society after his wife died in a car crash 6 months ago. She had read news articles, stories filled with rumors, stories that claimed he'd become colder, more ruthless, impossibly withdrawn, but the man sitting before her was not cold. He was breaking, holding his baby like the last fragile piece of a world that had been stolen from him. He finally looked at her, studying her face with soft, bewildered gratitude, and murmured, "You saved my son," his voice cracking on the word saved. She shook her head, shivering, and whispered, "I just did what anyone would do," but he leaned forward slightly, voice firmer now, as if he saw something in her she didn't see in herself. "No. Not everyone would stop. Not everyone would risk themselves. But you did." His gaze lingered on her soaked clothes, her trembling hands, her exhaustion, things she had tried so hard to hide from the world. And the way he looked at her made her feel exposed but, strangely, not judged. Then, the weight of the night grew heavier when Adrian whispered the words that made her breath stop. He wasn't lost. He was taken. Her eyes widened, the storm outside suddenly feeling quiet compared to the chaos those words stirred inside her. He continued, voice low and razor sharp, "Someone brought him here. Someone who wants to hurt me." The SUV sped through the rain-soaked streets as the baby finally settled, breathing softly against Adrian's chest, and Alina, pressed into the corner of the warm vehicle, realized her life had changed the moment she picked up that child. She had stepped unknowingly into the world of Adrian Hale. A world of wealth, danger, grief, secrets, and shadows. And as Adrian looked at her one more time with gratitude and something else she couldn't name, her heart whispered a truth she didn't yet understand. Fate had not brought her here by accident, and this night, this storm, this baby, this man, was the beginning of a story she was never meant to escape.